An Ode to Candlelight. Luz de vela. You who brings such comfort to the darkness, spires of meditation to the stillness, who tenders light with simple gracefulness, you who dances on tables and faces, bedclothes and bathwaters, who enchants the mind's eye to flicker back through rooms and nights, dinners and gardens, romances, remembrances of other moving candlelit moments, and glows on faithfully thousands of years and stories, and many a poet's heart soft reveries later. O luz de vela. Good evening, friends and newcomers, far and wide. Welcome to another floating poetry broadcast, the second in a weekly series, coming to you live by the sea, by moon, star, and candlelight, from Weekapaug, Rhode Island. This is your poet and poetorialist, Colin Goedecke. Tonight, sharing poems around gratitude with each and all of you for our greatly, innerly and outerly challenging times. I thought I might start with a thought by the fellow poet David Whyte, poet and philosopher, about poetry. He said, "What is astonishing about our contemporary world is how few people are present to what is physically occurring around them. Distracted thumbs on phone keys are a brilliant, iconic image Shakespeare would use today, were he alive, to illustrate the desperate need to be busy and remain undisturbed by a larger horizon of human endeavor for which we might feel inadequate. There is an unconscious sense that if we refuse to be present to the physical world around us, if we disappear into our screens, we will be held harmless from any of the greater physical patterns that might disturb and destroy the protected, often virtual worlds we have taken so much effort to construct around us. One of the many artful disciplines needed at this time is the art of poetry. Good poetry is speech fully in the physical body and fully in the body of the society in which it is spoken. Poetry is the spoken edge between what I think is me and what I think is not me. Poetry takes us beyond ourselves and into ourselves at exactly the same time. It is the place where the distance between us and others, between us and the world, comes to be healed and made more beautiful by intimacy." A poem, Standing Still with the Sun, one of many equinox poems I've created at each equinox, spring, autumn, winter. This was for the winter solstice back in 2018. Standing still with the sun. Meteors are showering overhead this solstice night, this nearly cold moon night, deep wintering night. The North Pole is turning south again to the echoes of centuries of singing and feasting, fires and dancing, sometimes with poetry and pomegranates, sometimes with bathing in holy rivers, giving alms to beggars and Brahmins. Round the death and rebirth of the light, round the last and next seasons of the earth, Solstice, a night for the sun and each soul to stand still. An invitation to feel your sacred place in nature, your passage through time, the vital part you play in this great mystery, in this endlessly curious, wildly wondrous journey. The next poem, The World is Ready. In case you missed the news, not in any headlines, but all the heart lines. The world is ready to be loved today. The whole world, from the birds and the clouds, the cities and their spires, to the tides and the downpours, the countrysides and their colors, everything and everyone you're sharing this whole world, whole earth with. Wake, breathe, dream, your whole life with. Here, the heart, light, music, spirit of it, all ready and waiting for your loving. Day 1 for a new year. Have a conversation with the morning light that enters and graces your room, with the silence you slept and dreamt into, with the earth passing deeply under your feet, with the open sky or any clouds floating about, with the young and old trees stretching their limbs, with the birds, whether quiet or singing their songs, with the stars, maybe a moon after the sun has slipped away, with the soul always there, by your side, attending. You may use words, they're not absolutely necessary. Day 2. Repeat day 1. On our theme of gratitude, there are many small and large things we could give thanks for, and this one is for the milk, frothed and poured into my morning coffee, and the milkman who delivered it, bottled and cold, to the grocery store, and the one who placed it on the shelf, and the other who checked it out with a smile. For the dairy farmer who raised and milked the soft and white and brindled cows, the cows that gave it to the farmer's pail, the pastures of grass and clover that fed the cows, and the barn that sheltered them. For the rain and sun that helped the pastures grow and green, the clouds that gave the rain, and the sky that held them up, and the earth that gave the fertile soil for the dream and streams of milk to even begin. Thank you. This is a poem from Sullivan, Maine. Winslow H. Winslow would have captured it all. The last sun soaking the bristled chest and tufted brows of evergreen, the pure white wash of light on the starboard side of the anchored lobster boats, the mauve and violet shadows on the shingled surface, all the watercolors of this ultramarine world refracted in the strokes of his sable brush. The next poem was commissioned around a gathering in Brooklyn where I was invited to be an enchanter for the evening and weaving my poetic arts through the evening freehand. And this was one of the poems that I arrived at for the evening, the theme poem, The White Elephant. Very appropriate for our poems of gratitude, I think, tonight. The White Elephant. Like the snow, like a cloud, or the moon, the song of a bird, the laughter of a child, the rare and sacred gifts that come our way in this world, from nature, from life beyond culture, from the oceans of our imaginations, that need not be useful at all to be valuable, whose beauty, transcendent beauty, intangibility, and freedom from practicality make them all worth our appreciating on any sunlit day, on any starlit night. The white elephant. One of the things I certainly know I am, and many of us are grateful for, all our ancestors, distant and more recent, that brought us here. And many years ago, in honor of my own grandfather, my father's father, in the spring of 2002, I wrote this poem for my grandfather. It's called My Grandfather's Figs. And he was nicknamed Old Man Daddy because he was the older version of my father as far as his looks were concerned. So that was his moniker. My Grandfather's Figs. My grandfather was a sweet-feeling fellow, swaying 6'6" in black wingtips and trademark bow tie, like the mast of an old sailing ship scudding along on a steady wind of whiskey sours and sentimental moods. Those holiday toasts where he rose and towered in the pale green dining room filled to the brim with family, eyes wet with tears and wine. Those still cool spring days on the small glass porch where he'd sit in half spectacles, bushy brows, and buttoned-up polo, a soft swathe of sunny yellow, talking about his fig trees, the little ones you could see there in the garden, all wrapped in burlap, the figs he was, like me, so grandfatherly tending. And if we're going to be grateful for grandfathers, I think we definitely want to be grateful and honor mothers. And this is an ode to those who brought us forth, mothers. Mary Cassatt painted many of them, so beautifully. Juno and Gaia were two of more than a few bigger-than-life figures, mythic maternals, likewise Venus and Parvati, but those of flesh and blood, one and all, they were the ones who literally, or as ifly, birthed and bathed and fed us, did their best for us, the best they knew how, as we began to become. Some have gone, yes, yet never forgotten. Some are still here, still tending, to be endeared, even revered, others reverse-mothered. Some are newly arriving into maternity, discovering its marvels, its mysteries, and we, whoever we are, who came singing from and through them, can be glad, can be grateful they made something so felicitous, so utterly miraculous possible. Mothers. If my brother is listening tonight, he came up with a wonderful word for bed, and it stayed with me for a long time. And later on, I wrote this poem using that very name, which is wonderful, and it's called The Great White Biscuit, which we can all give thanks for. Cozy place to be on any day or night. The Great White Biscuit. Our moniker for the mattress and box spring, the king-sized bed, the often enflowered bower of bliss we call the Great White Biscuit. Our life raft, our spacecraft, our deep sea bed where dreams swim and love is made, where old films play, where cats have curled, where we unfurl ourselves after a long day's journey into night. This bountiful broad billow of down and foam, the home plate where we slide, safe and sound. This comforting and comfortable layer cake for two, this soft and so delicious Great White Biscuit. You know, I thought this evening would not be complete. We have a few other poems, but I thought we ought to hear from the great Walt Whitman from Song of Myself, which many of us may know. And if we don't, it's a wonderful thing to get acquainted with. From Song of Myself, the smoke of my own breath, echoes, ripples, buzzed whispers, love root, silk thread, crotch and vine, my respiration and inspiration, the beating of my heart, the passing of blood and air through my lungs, the sniff of green leaves and dry leaves, and of the shore and dark-colored sea rocks, and of hay in the barn, the sound of the belched words of my voice loosed to the eddies of the wind, a few light kisses, a few embraces, a reaching around of arms, the play of shine and shade on the trees as the supple boughs swag, the delight alone or in the rush of the streets or along the fields and hillsides, the feeling of health, the full noon trill, the song of me rising from bed and meeting the sun. Have you reckoned 1,000 acres much? Have you reckoned the earth much? Have you practiced so long to learn to read? Have you felt so proud to get at the meaning of poems? Stop this day and night with me, and you shall possess the origin of all poems. You shall possess the good of the earth and sun. There are millions of suns left. You shall no longer take things at second or third hand, nor look through the eyes of the dead, nor feed on the specters in books. You shall not look through my eyes either, nor take things from me. You shall listen to all sides and filter them from yourself. Thank you, Walt Whitman. Grateful for him. The next piece. Blood freezes at -3 Celsius. Tears freeze at -30 Fahrenheit. Everything freezes except the spirit, which never freezes, never hardens, never deadens or ages, no matter the depth of our winters, the sudden plunge of our emotional temperatures, or the sometime extreme coldness, seeming frozenness of the world around us. In honor of all of our wonderful fellow citizens over in Europe and Italy in particular, much suffering, much more, I think, than many of us here. A poem called Senti Aroma, Listen to Rome. Today, a saxophone blows rouge over the cobblestones. Here, the faded yellows of accordion, guitar, and hand-tinted songs spool across the piazza. There, bells peal gold and umber onto the rooftops. Later, fluted silver tones blend with dancing green fountain song, aqua verde con verdi, until sapphire falls quiet from the night sky. Senti Aroma. Tonight, a small brass tingle of stars. And moving to the south, we go to Greece for a moment together, to Goedecke, to an ancient island called Kea and the Cyclades, where I spent some remarkable time. This was written back in August of 2012, and it's called Mesimeri, siesta, as I think about our own stillnesses, both chosen and put upon us in these times. Mesimeri. Sun-caked white walls, cascades of bougainvillea, scents of sweet basil, jasmine, geranium that plume as you pass through the quiet hours. sea blue shutters closed, stillness. Even the cicadas slighter, the sleeping bodies of the islanders lighter, the passage of time slower. Missy Maddie. So as we come to the last poems together for now, for tonight, everything is vivid. The curled brim of that leaving man's dove-gray fedora, the clear light falling on this young girl's yellow hair, the sensuous lips of the wavily scarved woman by the fountain, the sun-bronzed shoulders of a lone beachcomber, of an umbrellaed sleeper, an outspread hand on a gossamered chest framed in a looking-glass, the hips of a cream-white vase holding clouds of pale pink flowers, the morning legs of chairs turned up on the tables of closed cafes, the feet of statues standing silently inside the moving city. Our last poem for this evening together, Beauty Continues. While countries, armies, and ideologies battle, bees make honey, butterflies float and drink the nectar from gently open flowers. While spouses, neighbors, bosses, and workers quarrel, the sun still sets and rises, brings color, splendor to snow-hatted mountains, old-growth forests, bird-filled meadows. The moon still shines upon the faces of oceans and lakes, fjords and flowing rivers, on fish-filled bays, clear streams and tarns, tide pools of mussels, anemones, sea stars, while attentions, actions turn to ungraced choices and places of being, unlovely behaving in the world's towns and villages, houses and metropolises, beauty everywhere, ever here, ever pure, continues. Thank you for listening. There'll be recordings of each broadcast here on YouTube that you can share or watch again later. I hope you'll lean in again next time. Until then, good days ahead and good spirits. Good night.